When Bill O'Reilly was forced out of his Fox News show due to super creepy sexual assault allegations, Tucker Carlson took his spot. And while Carlson is known for his shockingly hateful commentary on most social issues, he recently attacked the brazen greed of America's largest corporations. Here is an example of what I mean.
A huge number of Amazon workers are so poorly paid, they qualify for federal welfare benefits. According to data from the nonprofit group New Food Economy, nearly 1 in 3 Amazon employees in Arizona, for example, was on food stamps last year. Jeff Bezos isn't paying his workers enough to eat, so you made up the difference with your tax dollars.
Okay, when did Tucker Carlson suddenly become concerned about low wages? And I feel like I've heard these same points before, but from someone completely different. Let's see, who makes extremely similar points about Amazon?
Right now in this country, we don't talk about it enough. There are millions of people who are working 2 or 3 jobs because wages are much too low. And what the American people say is raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. That's what the American people want.
If you're watching the video version of the show, I love how Jake Tapper blinks his eyes like a billion times as Bernie Sanders is making a great point. But anyway, look, we live in a strange world, right? Never would I have imagined that Bernie Sanders and Tucker Carlson would agree on something. And guess what? Amazon isn't the only corporation that Tucker Carlson has gone after on his show.
One recent study found that many Uber drivers lose money working for the company. That's not a sustainable business model. The only reason it continues is because of your generosity. Because you're paying the welfare benefits for Uber's impoverished drivers, child billionaires like Travis get to keep buying bigger houses and more airplanes.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Bernie Sanders, someone who's supposed to be the antithesis of the ideological propaganda you usually see on Fox News, believes the same thing. If you go to Bernie's website, you'll find that he shared an article titled, "Uber is not the future of work." The article explains how Uber mistreats its employees with low pay, weak collective bargaining rights, and lax overtime rules. So, given that Carlson and Sanders seem to make similar points on corporate greed, what does Tucker Carlson think about Sanders as a politician?
Bernie Sanders, of all people, is trying to get your money back from Jeff Bezos. This is especially amazing since Bezos is on Bernie's side on most things. They're both left-wing activists. But on this question, Bernie is right. He's planning legislation that would force big corporations to return the taxpayer-funded welfare benefits you have paid to their workers. It's not a perfect solution, and it's unlikely to pass. No matter what they may say in public, liberals in Congress would never support something like that.
I just love how he began that statement with Bernie of all people, as if he's the one who's been spewing pro-corporate propaganda for a living. Bernie was able to amass a gigantic following because of his vocal criticisms of corporate greed. Tucker, on the other hand, has consistently aired segments arguing against raising the minimum wage. He's also against regulations that protect workers, in addition to unions that would give employees collective bargaining rights. So why is Tucker Carlson suddenly sounding a lot more like a progressive on the issue of worker pay and corporate welfare?
This system is indefensible, and yet almost nobody ever complains about it. How come? Well, conservatives like us support the free market, and for good reason. The free market works. But there's nothing free about this market. A lot of these companies operate as monopolies. They hate markets. They use government regulation to crush competition. There's nothing conservative about that, just as there's nothing conservative about most big corporations. Just the opposite. They are the backbone of the left. Pick a left-wing cause that you think is hurting the country. Check the donor list, and you'll find the name of some corporation, often many corporations.
Now I kind of understand why Tucker Carlson has this nonstop, permanent, confused look on his face, even as he's reading a teleprompter. He's not making any sense. So Carlson is comfortable attacking corporations like Amazon and Uber because he perceives them as companies that consist of liberal activists, which is hilarious. All we ever hear from conservatives in regard to businesses in Silicon Valley is that they're evildoers who want to destroy the country, and it's because their CEOs kind of support left-leaning social issues.
America has changed enormously in the last 20 years. A lot of people you thought were your allies are in fact working against your interests. They have contempt for you and your family, your customs and your faith. Google is the most powerful company in the history of the world. It's the portal through which the bulk of our information flows. That means that if Google isn't on the level, neither is our understanding of the world. To an unprecedented extent, Google controls reality. Now, Google's already shown a disturbing willingness to distort reality for ideological ends.
While social issues are important, a corporate CEO's ideology on abortion, religion, or gay marriage is not a good indicator of whether they'd pay their employees a living wage. Tucker was rarely up in arms about how workers were treated before conservatives started freaking out about socially liberal Silicon Valley CEOs. But if you listen to a principled person like Bernie Sanders, you'll see that he's been spreading the word about record corporate greed from both socially liberal and conservative executives. Silicon Valley is no exception. If you look at the bigger picture, the majority of top US companies in the US are not owned and operated by lefties. Forbes compiled data consisting of the 50 richest families in America. As you can see, 56% of them are Republicans, while 14% are Democrats. Around 30% have a mix of both political parties. But if you mostly focus on Silicon Valley executives, as Carlson did, you'll notice them siding with the right wing when it comes to regulations. In fact, just last year, researchers at Stanford University conducted the first comprehensive look at the political attitudes of what they called wealthy technologists. According to the New York Times, on most culture war issues, they are unrepentantly liberal. They oppose restrictions on abortion, favor gay rights, support gun control, and oppose the death penalty. That's why someone like Carlson has no problem attacking these companies. But the study found one area where tech entrepreneurs strongly deviate from the democratic orthodoxy and are closer to most Republicans. They are deeply suspicious of the government's efforts to regulate business, especially when it comes to labor. They said that it was too difficult for companies to fire people and that the government should make it easier to do so. And guess what? They also hope to see the influence of both private and public sector unions decline. In other words, at the heart of what makes these Silicon Valley companies behave poorly toward their employees is what people like Tucker Carlson have been supporting for as long as I can remember: deregulation. Tucker makes it seem as though their social liberalism is what's leading to low wages, when in reality it's the same free market, anti-regulation BS he supports.
A lot of these companies operate as monopolies. They hate markets. They use government regulation to crush competition.
Carlson just said that these companies use government regulation to crush competition and create monopolies, except antitrust laws, which of course are regulations, are meant to prevent monopolies. Robert Reich writes that America used to have antitrust laws that permanently stopped corporations from monopolizing markets and often broke up the biggest culprits. No more. Now giant corporations are taking over the economy, and they're busily weakening antitrust enforcement. Monopolies were so problematic during the Industrial Revolution that our government had to craft laws preventing them from forming, all to protect consumers.
Presidents and other politicians around the turn of the 20th century were looking to help the American economy, and they recognized the need to regulate monopolies. The Sherman Act of 1890 was the first law that made monopolies illegal. In 1914, the Federal Trade Commission Act, which created the FTC, and the Clayton Act were passed to further protect consumers and smaller companies. Regulatory policies were installed to outlaw price gouging and mergers, which would hurt competition.
According to the Harvard Business Review, the golden era of antitrust laws was between the 1940s and mid-1970s. But with the emergence of the Chicago School of Economics and its successful promotion of neoclassical theories, enforcement of these laws began to wane. In fact, it had been more than 40 years since the Justice Department sued to block a vertical merger until Trump's DOJ finally did so last year to block the AT&T Time Warner acquisition. By the way, that acquisition will be moving forward. Look, while Tucker Carlson and Bernie Sanders are both able to identify the disastrous behavior of major companies like Amazon and Uber, keep in mind that they're attacking these companies for different reasons. For Bernie, it's all about protecting workers and dialing back corporate greed. For Tucker, it's all about identity politics. Because when it comes to corporate greed and deregulation, Tucker has always been one of the biggest cheerleaders. But when a company's executives happen to believe in socially liberal policy, all of a sudden, they're worthy of attack. Oh, you know you want to see more videos like this. Just subscribe to the channel below. And don't forget to become a TYT member and download the TYT Plus app on your phone. Head over to tyt.com/join today.